So, welcome to the fifth poetry critique class, where we critique poetry and where you need. I want to open by mentioning that I actually wrote the promised guide on how to critique poetry. You can check it in the link I shared in the class channel. There's nothing there that I hadn't really explained or spoke of in past classes, but now it is written so you can share it with other people and make use of it. I am also going to be putting forth the first poem for this week. It is not my poem, it is actually a poem of Alain's that was the final poem I meant for us to go over last week, but because we started late and ran over time, we didn't get to it. For those who are wondering, I actually left a number of poetry critique this week, so I feel like I can actually put forth a poem. And because Alain is not here, Daniel will read it for us. This poem is called Lost Signals and Recalculating. Alain will go over the recording and get to listen to it later. Daniel?
Okay, this is Lost Signals and Recalculating. Can you hear me properly?
Yes.
Okay. By
Yes,
Alain.
Bob. Yes, Bob.
Okay, and please everyone mute your mic so there's no interruptions in the recitation. Or otherwise I will have to mute you myself. Yes, thank you. Perfect. Okay. Check into the room. Promptly throw your key away. Swallow all your pride before asking for free toiletries, handouts and needles in the alleyway. Bagels by the door for the curious passerby. Expired cream cheese spread thin, part of an independence preamble. Hand over your heart, 1 foot yours, 1 mine. Step into the light, color outside the lines. Strolling through the yard, knives smuggled up sleeves and daisies scaring daffodils. Lack of regulation killing bees and tattoos of morning after pills. Chameleon culture changing colors. Pack of smokes on the curb lazily burning into ashes. Black spots in the snow. Gum stuck to your shoe. The mouse is a metaphor. Cheese at the end of the maze. Hubris on the cutting board. Bandits bandy showing cards. Solder soldiers to a doily. Fold because you're on fire. Fold because you're origami.
Thank you, Daniel. Now we are going to take a minute to read this piece quietly, and then we'll go over it. Okay, who wants to critique this piece first? Daniel?
Yeah, why not? So the first thing I noticed on a just more editing level or just structuring is the fact that in every stanza the first line is capitalized except for the end. I do see that might be because he has a semicolon there, so he may not want to capitalize the bandits, bandy. However, it still kind of sticks out to me. Perhaps it's one of those things where this is a actually 8-line sort of longer ending, but he cut up into 4 in order to make it look better. In that case, it might be better just to have it as 8.
But like, I actually like about the capitalization. I think it's fine because he does finish each prior stanza with a period, so it's always a capital letter following a period, and there are no periods besides. So
yeah, I'd say it's one of those times when even when it's following the rules, like it just strikes me a weird way. Now I also recognize some parts of this piece, and I think that he may have reworked this into something else for the challenge, because I recognize this kind of theme of the hotel, kind of the what would you call it?
I'd say that this theme about the empty society is Alain's most common theme. So it's not so it's.
But even the hotel, the asking for free toiletries, these sounds very familiar, but and the sort of expired food references, especially with cheese. Interesting.
No, because he has light bulbs are not answers, they are questions. There is a kernel of cheese curling into smaller beady-eyed mice. That's in another piece. It's not exactly the same, but yeah.
In any case, let's see. I think I might need more time. I'm a little slow with digesting something like this.
Anyone
else wants to go first?
Yeah, anyone else wants to comment on Alain's piece? Go ahead, Nerdy Kim, and speak slowly because you're speaking even faster than I do.
Okay. Trying to comment now. Well, I'm slower than Deepend actually, so it might take me, so much time to digest this as well. So I'll digest it while I speak. One thing I think it tried to mix some elements of nature with something very, very modern. Like mixing nature with I love the fact simplicity. Yeah, I know Daniel like rhymes. Yeah, I know you like rhymes. So when someone abandons it here, you really notice. So that's one.
Wait,
but
Nerdy Kim, you might want to write it because your microphone quality is really bad and you roboting a lot. So like you could write it in chat and I'll read it out loud for the sake of a recording.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's just bad quality. Your mic is also a bit quiet, Nerdy Kim.
No, the volume
go ahead
was
and
fine
type it in
for
chat.
me. It was more that he was roboting badly.
Okay.
While Nerdy Kim is writing, and I will read it later, Tiger, do you want to say something on this piece? No, do write it, Nerdy Kim. Yeah.
And if she's not ready, then I would request that you maybe give a couple tips on how to get faster. Like how would you recommend getting faster at digesting a whole piece and understanding its whole thrust in a short amount of time?
I actually I read very, very quickly. Like I read something like 1,000 pages a day when I read books. So and my trick to reading fast is to just read. So
like that's fine, but what about digesting the actual meaning of it?
No, that's what I'm saying. Like I don't have tricks. I just digest faster than most people, I guess. But like if I try to have tricks, it would be to try and identify the main theme or the main message. Like first of all, you need to identify if a piece is trying to have a message or if it's just trying to paint a picture, like what the piece is trying to do. This piece, for instance, is a political piece. It's trying to say something about society. So when you identify what it is saying about society, is it positive or negative? This piece is pretty easy to see that it's negative, and then that helps set everything fall into place once you go over it, because you see what he's commenting on in particular about, like, swallow your pride before asking for free toiletries, lack of regulation, killing bees, about the fakeness of it all, fall because you're origami, not because you're actually on fire. And then from the circle, and then you circle outside from the core to things that either help the message, detract from the message, or are independent messages. That would be my take. So I'd begin by trying to identify what the piece is trying to do, then what it's about, and circle out from there to the supporting commentary. And now I'm going to read what Nerdy Kim wrote in chat. He wrote, so I really like the fact that he employed simplicity. He didn't try to force rhymes when the message didn't allow that. The poem was simply written and particles of natural and artificial life were mixed. The enjambment was interesting. What is enjambment? I don't know that word. Let's see. Enjambment, in verse, the continuation of a sentence without pause beyond the end of a line, couplet or stanza. Although I can't fully decipher the message yet, but the suspense was killing him being Nerdy Kim. Okay, by the way, most of Alain's poems and most of my poems are free verse, as in they don't actually have rhymes. So it's not that he wasn't trying to force rhymes, he simply did not have any at all. And like if you see my poetry, there's very few rhymes as well. And now Tiger wants to speak. Tiger, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I do see the political themes, but I also think that there's a personal one in there as well. I mean, a while back he wrote the other one with the mouse, which also has to do with, losing being homeless or becoming homeless. And I sort of see this one as a progression of that one. Basically now he lost the apartment and is now in that place, and he's looking out, from that hotel to like the neighborhood, which is like a downtrodden neighborhood. So that's what I see in there. I mean, and of course there's political commentary because the neighborhood sucks and there's like a lot of horrible things happening there. But I think that it's a progression of the other one, actually.
I would have to, in this specific case, disagree. I think like the first stanza is about the mixing of the richest and the poor, like by side of like a hotel. Like you go to a hotel, you pay a lot of money, and then you demean yourself for free toiletries, and then outside the hotel there's handouts and needles in the alleyway. Like he's commenting that by the shadow of how shall we say it, of money, of well off, there's the underbelly is not far away. You don't actually have to go to a bad neighborhood to get there. It's just by the corner. That's my take. Daniel, you've had a few more minutes. Do you want to go now?
Yeah, absolutely. I can say some things.
And you can also comment on my tips on how to digest a piece if you feel like it.
That was perfect for what I was asking for. I didn't want to butt in and say that, but that was exactly what I was wanting to hear. So it sounds like you kind of quickly, there's a sort of nexus of core meaning that seems to come out. Not to get too far off topic, but what about on pieces that are more poorly conceived and that aren't very cohesive?
Then I actually left a comment on such a piece yesterday. You still need to try and identify what we are trying to do, and then a lot of my critique will be you actually have, and if you look back, I actually leave this comment a lot on Alain's pieces where I tell him you actually have two poems here and each one detracts from the other, and you simply need to split them up. But you still have to make a call on what they are trying to do. And sometimes, like I say, if you're trying to focus on X, then Y should go, and if you're trying to focus on B, then Z should go. But sometimes, if the piece is so poorly constructed that you can't tell what the message is, then that would be my feedback. Like, what can you do?
Okay, so for this piece, it's good to hear your kind of impression of the first stanza in Tigers and Nerdy Kims. You know, there's obviously the undertone of this is more of the dark themes that come out in Alain's writing at times. And at the same time, there's his underlying, I don't even know to call it whimsical or more of a lighthearted voice of a certain type of humor that is still present in this piece, but it's more dry. And what I would want to ask Alain is, what's the purpose of certain phrases that, because for instance, it seems to me like there's a very strong theme of stagnation here, and that this is a very inertiatic cycle that this society has gotten into to have all of these aspects. So for instance, like, what is the purpose of the phrase chameleon culture changing colors? Because the rest of that stanza is talking more about like something stagnant and slow. So I wonder what this is trying to say. If it's changing colors, does that mean it's just changing on a surface level, but it's not actually changing?
I think, like, if I could speak for Alain here, I don't think it's about stagnation. It's about decay. Like the rest of the stanza that is in most of the poem, and most of his poems are about stagnation. Here is that line in particular, I think, is about the fakeness of society.
Okay. Right. So I think maybe it's changing on the surface. That makes actually more sense to me. It's funny, since mouse is a repeating metaphor, this is kind of like a hyper self-aware thing to say the mouse is a metaphor. She's at the end of the maze. Again, I kind of sense sarcasm here.
And I actually commented on using the word metaphor 2 days ago. Remember using the
right, using metaphor as a metaphor.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah. Very meta. I really like the last stanza. This may be not the first piece that I've seen where he employs repetition only at the end, and knowing Alain's obsession with, compressing everything into a very tight, very purposeful meaning, when he uses repetition, he really means it. So I found it really nice at the end. Personally, I liked fold because you're on fire, fold because you're origami, and it does seem that he's saying, actually don't fold because you're on fire, fold because you're origami. But he says both as if they're to be equated. I like this ending a lot.
That's a question. Is it because it is to be equated, or is it like a progression? First you fold because you're on fire, and then you fold basically because you are actually like a paper tiger, You don't actually have any real teeth, which brings us back to the start. Swallow all your pride before asking for free toiletries. But you are a wet towel. Hello, Hazem. Anyone else wants to go on this piece? Or, Danny, are you done?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so anyone else, and hello, Steve, anyone else wants to go about this piece before I read my comment that I left? Okay, I'll go, and then if anyone else will want to, they will go. Okay, let's start with a question. What is a bandit's bandy? That can show cards. That's because I wasn't sure what that word literally means. Now, we spoke of it in critique class, so I have to point it out. The near rhyme of doily in origami at the final stanza was distracting. You need to use more commas. You use them, so there's no excuse for not using them everywhere really, especially when there are a couple of instances, such as one foot yours, one mine, where you need one in the middle of the line. Chameleon culture changing colors is a lovely line and full of alliteration, but considering alliteration doesn't really return until the final stanza's first two lines, it's a bit weird. Passerby is incorrect, it should be passerby. Hand over your heart is probably my favorite line here due to the ambiguity of being part of the oath of allegiance, of being a command to hand over your heart to someone else. If we compare this poem to the prior days, which was celibacy is the new ecstasy, then it begins answering much of my criticism about that one. For those who did not see my critique of that one, in that one I said that he's being critical of society, but he doesn't go all the way, but his criticism doesn't have bite. And if your message specifically is to be critical of society, then you can't not have a bite. So this piece is clear and direct, it has teeth, and it uses them to bite. But then it keeps going and it loses it. Daisies carrying daffodils is a non sequitur saying nothing. Lack of regulation killing bees straddles the line between conveying both the literal meaning and hinting at the gun control issue, and not being clear about that. And then we get into lines that are again disdainful without being clear. The mouse is a metaphor, and I spoke of it a bit in Plain Clothes Prophet, with using metaphor and proverbial being weird when that is itself a metaphor, and here it feels a bit lazy to point it out in case someone will miss it, and to point it out to not be accused of using a cliché while you are actually using one. The start of this poem is great, then it folds. I really feel as if all of these disdainful poems, or somewhere around 4 to 5 of them, could be mashed into one incisive poem that really conveys what you want to say, without all the twee fat. Anyone wants to reply? Have either to what I'm saying, to agree, to disagree, or about Alain's comment, because Alain is not here. Yes, Katya, you may definitely speak.
Thank you, thank you. I'm slow because really I need to go through it multiple times, because at first I caught just this idea of some addiction or being dependent because of the lines like swallow all your pride. It's the first that occurred to me.
That's an idiom, by the way.
Then it was, yeah, but you see, that's first thing that I caught from this poem in general. Then like hand over your heart. Again, some lines similar to like losing your pride. And in the end, this fold because you are origami. It's like you can't decide anything. You see, you are folded like you are manipulated in this line. So that's what I got. And then I read it again and again, and I thought that it might be talking about anything, even about love. Like there is no this hotel room. Maybe it's the condition. What you are like, you are entering it, this condition. You swallow your pride and all the things that he described. It can be anything, really. That's why this piece is really, it's amazing. I think that different people will see different things. Like you saw something about society, me, I saw something about love, really.
But that is an interesting question. A piece that can be about anything is also a piece about nothing. Like, I do agree that a piece should have room for the reader to read what they bring into it, but if it lacks any message of its own, then I personally feel like it fails. And if you can read absolutely anything into it, then that means it lacks a message.
Okay, maybe I said it wrongly. Maybe not absolutely anything, but different things. Let's say various things.
Mhm. Thank you for the comment, Katya. Anyone else wants to go about this poem before we move on? Final call? Okay. Who wants to share their poem next? Whoever wants to share it should send the link in, not speak up, send the link in. Yeah, okay, so Tiger got here first. Tiger, do you want to read your poem?
I have a SoundCloud to that, so if Daniel can key it in, I shared it yesterday, but this poem is really important to me because the message is really important to me, so that's why I'm presenting it today again.
By the way, if possible, personally I think it's better to read it out loud, but it's up to you. Like, I mean,
it's important. I'd like to have the SoundCloud, please.
Okay. Daniel? I'm just checking the word count. You're good.
They will be coming for him, my baby soft, with eyes still filled with wonder. Bestow him with 1,000,000 kisses. I wish were shields to save him from his fate. They will come, boots crunching, announcing their presence in the hay. They will pull, drag, beat his crying form, and I shall stand screaming. My grief will echo through these walls in bleeding chunks of desperation. My pain has become part of the very structure they housed me in. Touch the stones and they will reverberate in the sad history of my people. It leaks into the souls of the imprisoned, painting our days in shades of dread. The children born here are products of violation, yet we cherish our few stolen moments. My son, my beautiful son, soak up this love, this ocean you fill me with. They are coming now. One never feels prepared, no matter how often one experiences it. My errant hopes of a miracle crushed like the flowers you will never get to see. I take in your scent, categorize every detail. You are a marvel born into nightmare. The footsteps of our captors are the timer announcing the expiration of your light. I call your name for hours, days, until silence takes residence in the darkness I'm left to live in. My baby soft, you are no more now than broken, dismembered flesh under uncaring hand. Your only crime, to have not been born human.
Okay, and we are going to take a minute now to read this piece quietly. Okay, who wants to go first? Anyone? By the way, I have to say again, Tiger, that personally I feel like if you would just read the piece as I say it neutrally, Personally I would like it better. Okay, so anyone wants to go? If nobody volunteers, I will go first. Anyone?
Okay, I can go, but I will say just
Please go
I will
ahead,
talk
Katia.
about my first. Thank you. I will talk about my first impression. Well, from the very beginning, I realized that she's not talking about a baby. I mean, a human baby. It's about a dog. I'm guessing. And in the end, I realized that I'm right, and that for her, this tragedy that will, I don't know, she will never be okay with this. That's why I think she writes about it, and she needs to process it. Oh, well, so far that's all.
Actually, it's about cows specifically, but more so about livestock in general and how they're raised within our society and how they're butchered and whatnot.
Yeah, by the way, like I I understand the need for the writing notes in this case. But it's cheating actually looking at it before commenting. By the way, Tiger, you should actually break the writing notes into various paragraphs because it's a block of text right now. Okay, so Daniel, do you want to go now or will I go first?
Yeah, it's fine. I can go. But yeah, in the future, I would request if someone else could go first, but that's fine. I don't mind. There's a lot of interesting things and powerful things in this piece. Like, I definitely get like a feeling in the pit of my stomach from this piece. I did yesterday and I did today. So I think it has a strong pathos, which Tiger does well in her writing, you know, appealing to strong emotion. And again, with kind of appealing to the motherly sense. Bestow him with 1,000,000 kisses I wish were shields to save him from his fate. This is an interesting line to me because it actually gives me the feeling that the mother knows that they are shields in some sense, not that just they wish they were shields, but perhaps they can't save from the physical. And then here we see on the 4th line something that I've come to see is characteristic of how Tiger writes, and I'm not sure if it's related to the fact of some other languages that she speaks, where this maybe is more characteristic, because rarely I see in English, you know, 3 verbs in commas like this. They will pull, drag, beat his little crying form, but I've seen her do this a lot, and this is a nice kind of a signature thing, I would say, that I would say she pulls off well. Others may disagree, but I think that in some cases when people do this, it comes off as indecisive of not knowing what they're trying to say actually, but here it's nice, you know, it's sequential. I shall stand screaming. I personally don't really like the metaphor of the grief and the bleeding chunks of desperation. It seems too seems like it's trying too hard to me. It seems like overly, what's the word for it?
Shouty.
Yes. I can't think of the exact word I want to say about it, but yeah. My pain has become part of the very structure they house me in. This I find interesting. I like how you go into this idea of emotions becoming ingrained into structures and physical objects, because, you know, then you continue, the stones will reverberate in the sad history. I almost want to hear reverberate with the sad history. Reverberate in is kind of like maybe it's trying to do something, but I think it comes off strange. It leaks into the souls. The one line, my beautiful son, soak up this love, this ocean you fill me with, is one of the few, I guess, just exultant lines, you know, affirming the love of a mother that is sort of, you know, infinite. My errant hopes of a miracle crushed like the flowers. For some reason, errant seemed like perhaps not the right term for that.
Erroneous, maybe.
What did you say?
Erroneous? Maybe. Maybe it should have been erroneous.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You're a marvel born into nightmare. I like that phrase a lot. Again, I'm not sure on the second line in that if that was exactly the best way to do it. The footsteps of our captors are the timer announcing the expiration of your light. Like some of the things in this piece seem like a little over exaggerated to me, like in order to make sure that the point is conveyed, but I don't know if it has that effect. Then again, it might, because I definitely felt a lot from this piece. And of course, then the last line is the last part is longer than the rest, and there's sort of a punchline. You know, you find out that this is not a human, which you may or may not understand beforehand, which is definitely intentional on your part. I know. So overall, I think it's a powerful piece, and I think those are my main comments, kind of like picking it apart, but I appreciate you sharing it. And I did, like I said, I feel like the main strength of this piece for me was the emotion that it was capable of producing.
Okay, I will go now. First of all, like Katya, I thought that this piece is actually about a dog, because it is actually never made clear that the speaker is the literal mother. Your only crime to not have been born human. So I think if you want to make it clear that the speaker in the piece is his literal mother, it should have been our only crime to not have been born human, because otherwise, even if like I look at the entire piece again without looking at your notes, when there is nothing here to actually make me think that it is not a human speaking to a cherished animal. And even then, we can look at it as something else, as the mother of like a child with a disability, or let's say the mother of a child who is a minority, but he is considered less than human, or as I spoke that last week was the Israeli Holocaust Memorial Day, then you could even read it as if it's the Nazis coming for your child, because they don't consider the child to be human. In terms of editing critique, there's actually quite a lot that I think should be fixed. They will be coming for him. You use him here and it becomes you afterwards. I think that you generally should pick one of them and stick with it. They will be coming for him, my baby soft, with eyes still filled with wonder. It makes it seem as if the eyes still filled with wonder, but the subject of it is they, so that needs to be organized a bit. You are using commas at the beginning and end of a piece, but there are several sentences in the piece that lack commas. For instance, where you say my baby soft in the penultimate line, there should be a comma afterwards because it is speaking directly to him. I disagree with the choice of having the future tense at the beginning. My grief will echo. That's needlessly weak. Why have a future tense? I imagine you had written my grief echoes through these walls in bleeding chunks of desperation. That's a much more powerful line. The will here cushions it, while it actually works against what the piece is trying to do. I definitely agree with Daniel that some of the pieces here, some of the lines here are definitely too shouty. Like, my errant hopes of a miracle crushed like the flowers you will never get to see. that is too much pathos. Like, the piece doesn't need it. You don't need to do it like that. That is also like why I personally don't care for how you read your pieces in a non-neutral voice, because I feel it makes them come off as Daniel said, as trying too hard, while the message does speak for itself. You know, there is no need to paint over it as well. My baby soft, you are no more now than the broken dismembered flesh under uncaring hand. It should either be under an uncaring hand or under uncaring hands. That's a grammatical issue. The children born here are products of violation, yet we cherish our few stolen moments. I wrote something here, me and him. Why is it like, it should be like, you should be clear that me and him cherish our few stolen moments, or why are only the children born here are products of violation? Isn't the speaker as well? Like, that's basically my commentary. Like, I think you should, it's mostly a question of tightening up the piece. You will get to speak, Katya. You can wait until I am done, and then you will get to also speak. But yeah, like, I feel this is a classic case of needing to tighten up the way in which it is written for it to shine clearer. Okay, Katya, your turn. You are free to speak. That's why
Okay.
we have votes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just couldn't wait, as it seems. So when Daniel said that some lines seem to him exaggerated, I thought that it's perfectly, it's just, I don't know, it's perfectly logical, because a mother feels like this when her son is being killed. I don't know, how else can you react on this? I just don't know. I'm a mother, I even don't imagine this.
My answer would be twofold. First of all, what is logical is not necessarily as relevant, because this is a poem. And second of all, we're not saying that the grief should not come through. We are saying that it dips into the theatrical at this stage. It feels like, you know, in a theater, that they make exaggerated body movement and facial expression, so even people who are far away will actually see it. We are not saying, what we are saying is actually the opposite, but we feel the grief comes off strongly, but you don't need to slather it on. But sometimes less is more. Like, personally, one of the strongest scene of grief I've ever seen in cinema was a piece that was entirely silent. Like, the movie, you know, the movie had music throughout, but when a mother saw her dead son, and we saw her like wailing and screaming, there was no sound at all. Not hairs, no music, nothing. So I think sometimes less is more, because while if you go too heavily in, it forces people to detach. That's my take. And Nerdikim, plenty of others, will act exactly the same when they lose a child. And I say it as someone who lives in a country where many people lose their children, and it's not funny, Nerdikim. That's not something you lol about. Okay, anyone else wants to say something? Steve, Hazem, anyone else?
May I say again?
Yeah, sure.
It's just, I agree with you that maybe her feeling would be quieter if her son was already dead. But when he is about to die, I think that it's very appropriate to scream like this. Her lines, it's a scream. It's like she can't keep it. That's why they're like this. I feel it like this.
Okay, so we are simply going to agree to disagree, and that's perfectly fine. Yes, Nerdikim, what do you want to say? Nerdikim is writing for everyone listening to the recording, so we are going to wait a moment. Nerdikim is saying probably your expression or your opinion of her expression is tilted. I take it he means biased, and my answer is that it obviously is. Every reaction someone has is biased by their own take, and that's to be expected. Nerdikim says poetry is wider than what you explain. Obviously, every critique anyone leaves is biased by their tastes, by their opinions on what poetry is, and that's to be expected. Like, you can't leave comment, you can't actually critique anything in a manner that actually says anything if you try to be objective, and no one is ever objective. So no, I don't even try to be objective. I don't even try to act as if I am being objective, because I'm not. My critique is definitely my critique. Nobody else would leave my critique because they are not me. Try to speak, Steve, and we'll find out. Say something.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Steve. We can hear you, Steve. But you need to push to talk, I think.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to the other one real quick so I can look at the poem while I talk.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to chime in on that, this is one aspect of what holds people back from giving critique. And even as someone like who, like, I'm not shy or ashamed of putting my impression, but I'll just tell you, it's just an obstacle that you have to overcome when you're starting to give critique, is that you worry too much whether people will judge what you're saying or your stance. But the reason why you're giving your critique is so that you can give your stance, and it's not objective. You're saying, like, the reason why people get confused, I think, when Guy gives critique is because they confuse the fact of his confidence in what he's saying with being objective, because they're not used to someone delivering their opinion so strongly. But you have to just overcome this hurdle, and don't give critique. Just if you give critique to people that react very defensively to this, and then don't leave them critique again.
Nerdikim wrote, besides, I guess what she gave was fictitious, so the fact it was not real was what did not let her regulate the techniques she utilized. I strongly disagree, because you are a writer. You, like, plenty of what you write is fictitious. It's metaphor. It's metaphorical. If writing about something that is fictitious does not allow you to regulate how you write, then you need to become better at writing. That's like, this is something that I will say that is objectively true. Like, if you, like, I think it's actually the opposite. As Tiger said, she feels very strongly about this piece and its subject matter. So to her, this is very, very real, and if anything, that is why she couldn't, so to speak, regulate her writing. But I think it's more the case that what Katya said. It's not that she couldn't regulate her writing, it's that she disagrees that she should. It's that this is how she chooses to proclaim the strength of her feelings. Like, me and Daniel think it's a bit too much, and that's fine, but that's a disagreement. It's not. I definitely don't think Tiger couldn't have written it differently. I think she chose not to. Yes, Steve.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I just want to say that this poem for me, I have a different perspective on a few things. As far as the tenses go, I I think I understand what she was doing here, because the first part is it's talking about they will be coming, and it's by using that sort of language, you start to realize that this character knows what's going to happen. So to say they are coming or whatever, it put it more in present tense. It's more of like a projection that this character is experiencing with the first part. And then it immediately jumps about halfway through to they are coming now. And that's when she starts to change to the yous, where she was talking about they are coming, and at the beginning it's him. Well, when she makes that dramatic shift to they are coming, and then the rest of the poem is in present tense, it just becomes more visceral because now it has this urgency, and then the yous become more, it's more like the what's happening is the person in front of you, whereas the him, there's sort of a detachment because she's gone through it so many times, and it just kind of, for me, it kind of helps. I really enjoyed that aspect. As far as the stanzas go, I don't understand the choice of the 2-line stanza. I'm not saying it's wrong. I haven't figured it out yet. And then the very last stanza ends in 3 lines, and I don't even know if I need that very last line, your only crime to not have been born human. And another thing that occurred to me is maybe just this could be 2 stanzas where the first part of the poem before that, they are coming now, is 1 stanza, and then the second part is, and that would kind of maybe help with some of the tense stuff as well, because it would separate it in a different way. And also, as far as the imagery and the shouting imagery, I'm on board with that. For one reason, it's because this experience that this creature is going through is that. And secondly, I think that it could be stronger because without the notes, I wouldn't have known what this was about. So I'm kind of on board with that. There are clues, but I'd either have to be involved in that world to get it right away or something to that extent. So if I were Tiger, I'd maybe look for some areas to maybe make this more universal, where her message is understood and the clues maybe aren't just so soft. Like the baby soft for me, that was a clue to a cow imagery in a weird way. The million kisses, I think that it's done on purpose with this crunching boots and words like million. It kind of does tie it to the Holocaust, and I think that was done intentionally. So there's a lot in this poem for me, and I really enjoyed it and the way it was written. I really don't have a lot of critique for it, except for what I said, and I just wanted her to know that I really enjoyed it. Please.
Before I give Tiger a chance to speak, I actually do think the last line is really important, because most wars involve or stand for, most atrocities come from not looking at the other side as if it's human. But I do think that like if I think like simply changing your only crime to our only crime would have made it much clearer that it's about animals. Because okay, Tiger, do you want to say anything at this point?
I have a few things that I wanted to say, but what I also wanted to say to Kim is that Guy and I disagree on a lot of stuff, but I never take anything that he does as debasing of my person. And Guy knows me well enough. We might disagree on stuff, but he's never disrespectful towards me, so don't worry about that. That being said, the 2-line choice it was just seriously random, so Steve is not wrong on that, and everyone else on that. I just basically structured it that way. I have no idea why I did that, so I guess I did it for visibility. I'm not quite sure. When it comes to the errant hope, the reason I use that and not Arrhenius is because I was also pointing to the archaic form of it, meaning wandering. So it has both in it, both as being, being through a hope that is diverging to what it's supposed to be, but also the wandering hope, because like if you're in a situation where you're trying to find some kind of, safety, your mind is jumping from how can I save this person, scenario A, B, C, D, E. So that's why I use that. When it comes to the comma stuff, I'm still learning how to do that, because as I said, I speak so many languages and there's so many like comma things. Now Daniel was right when it comes to the me doing like the pull, drag, whatever, that is deliberate, because I'm trying to make show the dynamic of something happening, but like sometimes I have no idea where to place a comma, and that's something that I'm still learning, because with all my languages and never being in formal school, I mean, it's a disaster. It is a complete disaster. The uncaring hands guy was right on that. I should put an S on there, but I often forget and drop an S or something for some reason. When it comes to the dramatics, I'm with Katya with this, but it might be a Russian thing that, we're very emotional people. So that basically goes in there in that way. And once again, thank you very much for taking the time to do this. And I wanted to say that Steve got the idea about the progression, because the reason I went from the different tenses, it was intentional. First, she's talking to a general public, saying what's about to happen. And then as soon as she hears them coming, she's shifting her emotional focus to her son, trying to give him the last piece of, love or whatever, because she knows exactly what's going to happen to him. So thank you very much for everything. Okay.
You are welcome, Tiger. Who wants to share their piece next? Link it in the channel. By the way, while we are waiting, I want to point out that I liked Live Russian's comments that led to a nice discussion. I think Lazarus Wist is a very underrated poet on the Steemit platform. I'm going to drop a link to him here. Like I actually found him 2 weeks ago, and I've mentioned him in the Isle of Wight curation post. He's not getting enough love, and he's definitely, I'll say it like this, there's not a lot of good poetry on Steemit, and I think his poetry is consistently good to great, so I recommend people give him a read. That's the first thing. Second of all, 2 of the comments people left last week I felt were a bit weak, but I haven't had time in the past week to actually touch base with people on their comments, but one of those people actually left a much better comment this week, and it's nice seeing that people are actually improving as that people are actually improving. I know the first time it can be a bit scary to leave comments, but once you feel comfortable with yourself, it flows much better. And yes, Hazem is the person I'm speaking about. His comment last week was a bit wanting, but your comment this week was much better. I enjoyed seeing the improvement, Hazem. Good job to you as well. And Daniel is saying, I feel leaving critique could become addictive. I enjoy it a lot. And now Daniel knows why I barely leave, why I don't have time to write posts, because I leave comments. Okay, so who's sharing their poem next? Come on, people. Share a poem. Share a poem. Now! Okay, so this is Daniel. Daniel, do you want to read it, or do you want to use the recording you have?
No, I'll just read it again.
Okay. I personally...
And I wasn't going to share mine because I wanted to leave it for other people, but no one was coming forth, so
Yes.
that's what it is.
Yes.
Okay, this is Basket of Braids. The sun's heat through clear panes, bringing love vigor and madness. A basket of wheat containing strange things nestled beneath the grains, but which only emerge behind closed doors. Allow me to stroll to the storeroom in midday. No one expects insanity in spring. Let me see the stock left over from winter. Let me purvey the goods on the shelves that cling, pickle vegetables, locked in webbed adhesion. Let me select supper in seclusion. Allow me to repeat fantasies under my breath on the long walk back to the cottage. Departing my door, I slant upwards always. Along the swaths of cement, I advocate for suffrage of subtle awareness, selecting temperatures, contours, pneumatics for bent legs, humidity. Elements swirl and transmogrify, so kind as to hide their operations from my easily excitable eye. Thought becomes a pair of knees and pressure of toes on pavement. I am a mechanical crane beautified, overgrown by flowering vines feeding on iron, my structural integrity gradually compromised by life's delicacy. The night's insensate warmth, a burgeoning love wildness, bamboo turmoil of time canceled. In the alternation of extremes, I catch a glimpse of the silent furnace of dreams, which only hints at the true pattern beneath the grain.
Okay, before we take a minute to read this poem, I just wanted, because I noticed it here and then remembered, Tiger, you had one word which was written and not spoken, or vice versa. It was in the fourth line, the word little. Okay, so now we are going to take a minute to read this poem in quiet.
Little? Where?
The fourth line.
By the way, don't vote on this post if you haven't already because it's paid out.
Short interjection. Daniel, one would think that spring would be exactly the time where people go berserk.
Tiger, let's wait till we get to the time for critique. Okay, who wants to go first? And we already had a comment by Tiger out of turn. Ahem. Anyone wants to go first? I guess this.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll go.
Yeah, I
Let
just
me switch over.
I just wanted to make a joke that this time Daniel is saved from going first. No, I'm a cat. Tiger.
Okay.
Yes.
For me, every time I hear or read Daniel's poems, it's I think of Guy and his constant theme for his critique on Daniel, and see if Daniel's putting more of himself in his poem. That's what I mainly do when I read his poems now. And I would say there's a little bit more in this one. So I'm enjoying that. I've always loved Daniel's wordplay, his visual use of just putting words together the way they look. I really enjoy that in a lot of poetry, and Daniel definitely, his poems have that for me. So every time I read one, I get that from it. And he also has a lot of mystery, and I love puzzles. So for me, reading Daniel's poems is often like trying to solve a puzzle, which I enjoy. And it gets me to read it more than once, usually. And I would just say I got a lot out of this poem from that perspective, that he's put some of himself into it, and it's still a puzzle. And I'm not sure I've sorted it out yet, but I know the clues are there, and if I read it enough times, I'll get somewhere close. From what I've gathered so far, I'm thinking maybe the number one is kind of a hint towards maybe some kind of an infatuation, maybe with someone in his vicinity. And the last stanza kind of made me think that might be true. Maybe he's getting some food somewhere, and that's where he sees this person, and on his walk home to the cottage, he's thinking about the fantasies. I could be wrong on that. And then the middle part, the second one, kind of, I'm not really sure what this one's about. I really have to puzzle over that. And the last one is, maybe I think the last two are being alone after the first one, and just kind of settling down into himself and ending up in himself in the night with the last one. That's kind of where I'm at with it. And that's really all I had to say. I don't really have a lot of critique. I thought there was something kind of cool in the third one, the second line. I like how you did a burgeoning love dash wilderness, then the long dash.
Wildness.
That I really loved. The reason, love wildness. I thought that it was really cool, and it spoke something to me. And I think it also tied all three of them together, because that love wildness is kind of hinted at in the very first part of the piece. So I just thought it did a really good job of kind of having three parts, and all three of those parts having something to do with the whole. So that's really what I got to say about it. That's it.
Be careful, Steve. You are going to make him focus again on making his poems pretty over being meaningful. Okay, who wants to go next on Daniel's poem? For Nerdy Kim who does not know, I tend to go last, also because I tend to go at most length.
I'll go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. For some reason, I'm not going to go into the grammatics. We know I suck at that. But for some reason, I have this feeling that this is like not written in the modern times, even though it later talks about a crane, because like the whole going into the pantry thing at that store and the long walk home and all that, or at least it's in a secluded region. I feel that the first portion, the food shopping is also basically, or the gathering of that food is also, with every food item, basically it's like a recap. He's recapturing like the past year, if that makes sense. Sort of like what happened. So sort of like when a new year starts, you sort of like think what happened last year, and you sort of like evaluate it. So it's like the buying of food is an evaluation in my mind. And then basically on the walk home, he has this, he's looking at what he's lacking, I guess. And then I'm not quite sure about the what's being said in the third portion. I'm going to have to sort of ferment on that one. I did want to say what I said before, that, you know, actually the spring is the time when people go insane, considering, you know, to say it in the words of, you know, Thumper and Flower, you know, the Flitterwit or whatever, you know, where people sort of go crazy because of hormones. But that's sort of what I have to say to that for now. And I might write something once I sort of get a grasp on what the third part means.
Katya and Hazem, do you want to speak while Nerdikim is writing his response? Come on, Hazem, be brave. You can do it. I believe in you. Katya?
Oh, I'm not sure. I had not enough time to to get it, but I agree with Tiger that he's talking metaphorically about past, like in spring, some new time that is coming. We can look back what happened in winter, and this like fruits, food. It's what we did. I mean, it's our, how can I say it in English? Like the fruits of our what we did. Sorry, can't put it into the words. And what was the most like the greatest puzzle for me is the second chapter. What is he talking about? Can somebody tell me? It looked like I don't know. I won't say it. I'm afraid to be wrong. And in the
Don't
end,
be afraid to be wrong. Please say it.
okay, it looked like a prayer to me again. But then this mechanism, is he talking about a human being, like comparing it to some mechanism who has to go forward? I don't know. That we don't go back. We go just forward. We it would be lame to say we grow. Okay.
By
So
the way, like transmogrify is a word that has religious connotation in Christianity, and specifically in Daniel's poetry. You should, like, if you assume that it has something to do with prayer, you're often not wrong. So
yeah, I
that's
felt it.
yeah.
I felt it, and in the very end, like the true pattern beneath the grain. Okay, hints at the true pattern beneath the grain. I think he's talking about the truth that is hidden from us, but at some point it gets revealed. I don't know. Again, it can be revealed during some experience. It can be meditation, like a little bit. He starts seeing beneath the grain, but it's not truly revealed until some point. I think it's very important, this last line.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Okay, so I'm going to go now, and then hopefully Nerdikim will finish writing his thoughts by the time I'm done, and then I will read his thoughts. First of all, there's obviously in the first line of the second stanza there is a 2 missing, and you could hear Daniel catching up on it as he added it. Okay, Nerdikim finished, so I will read what he had to say before I go. Nerdikim, it took a long time to understand, and all I could feel was the weather. Then later got to feel the muse of him having an opinion of what the weather gives, the run online as well. Besides, isn't spring subjective? It's crazier in the States than in Moscow, so I think spring to him was Texan enough. There's a way your modes of expression alternate, it's never straight. I think the run online accounts for that. Okay, so I will go now. First I'm going to go like it also caught my eye about no one expects insanity in spring, and I thought, why not? And then it struck me. What he's speaking about is cabin fever, about, about being cooped up all winter long without being able to go outside, and the madness that comes from being too close to other people and alone with your own thoughts. And then he has the line, let me see the stock left over from winter. Let me purvey the goods on the shelves that cling. And I think there is a double meaning here. The stock left over from winter is not just the literal stock left over from winter, but also let me look on the whimsy, on the fantasy, on the insanity that he still has in stock from winter. And before I move onward, I have to say that I feel there should be more commas in this piece, specifically at the end of lines. There are definitely cases where there should be more commas that are lacking. That's my main editing critique to this piece, aside from the two. I want to look at, in the second section, I will get to speak about what I think this piece is about in a bit, but in the second stanza, second section, I advocate for suffrage of subtle awareness, and suffrage is an interesting word because it either means the right to vote in political elections, like when there was the women's suffrage before the women were allowed to vote in America, and the other meaning that is used much less often where I read is a series of intercessory prayers or petitions. Intercessory, for those who don't know, means that you ask God, in this case, to intervene on your behalf, to save you. So it is a question of what Daniel means here, especially as he does use transmogrify later, and Daniel does have a tendency to use specifically Christian imagery, even if he might disagree. But as a reader, I definitely see like Christian imagery throughout his writing. Something that is weird to me is life's delicacy. My structural integrity gradually compromised by life's delicacy. So the way I can see it is like how many people, especially men, are rather rigid and closed off to the world when they are young, and gradually they open up. Many people speak of how it happens to them when their first child is born, but even if you don't have a child, like I can tell you that like it reminds me also of Hazem's piece we went over a couple weeks back that was on the same topic about opening up to feelings, to feeling sadness, to feeling joy. His poem was "What is this life about?" or very close to that name. So what do I feel this piece is about? This piece is about, even if not about, something I feel is an important layer of it is daydreaming. Allow me to repeat, fantasies. That's why he's looking back to the stock he had left over from winter. Fantasies is another way of saying, in this case, madness or insanity. And then when he departs the doors, I slant upwards always. He looks to the world. His easily excitable eye, he's daydreaming. In this case, he's speaking also about the clouds in particular, because there is also that image and that imagery. The night's insensate warmth, a budging love wildness, bamboo turmoil of time cancelled, and I keep being bugged by the one L in cancel. In the alternation of extremes, I catch a glimpse of a silent furnace of dreams. And by the way, the Silentfulness of Dreams is my favorite image in this whole piece, and maybe in everything you've written to date. But that's what ties it together, because in the fullness of dreams, we make ourselves. We are born out of our dreams. We reforge ourselves in our dreams. And furthermore, dreams are also a fullness that collects everything that happened to us during the day, which is the easily excitable eye, the subtle awareness. In the first stanza, in the first section, I mean, he picked fruits. In the second stanza, he picks contours and shapes and forms. And this combination of the mundane and the abstract is what creates his Big Joe. You need to mute your microphone. Is what creates his self, his sensations, his imagery, his fullness of dreams. And the fullness of dreams is also what, and this is also like a meta comment. The fullness of dreams is what poems are. It is both what comes out of our dreams, and it also is like leads to the creation of new images in other people, but it only hints at the truth of what he's feeling. And in that sense, one could see it as similar to The Mute Poet, which I've read yesterday. And yeah, and I'm a Mechanical Crane Beautified, my thoughts on that is that he's speaking of, again, of being like a rigid person before life actually overtakes him and opens him up to life. And by the way, about my accent, people are saying that they love my accent. It is actually common for people who don't know Israelis to mistake an Israeli accent for French, for a French accent. It happens in Australia, it happens in the United States. It happened to me before, it happens to other people I know. But yeah, everyone who has heard Israeli accent before can tell that it's actually quite different. Okay, anyone else wants to go about Daniel's poem?
Can we ask Daniel?
Steve, you forgot to. You only pushed to speak for a moment there.
Oh, I was gonna see if I could ask Daniel a yes or no question.
You can always ask him.
Right,
okay.
I can't be assured he'll answer it.
Yeah, but just
I
one
ask.
moment. People in chat, please stop, like with the chatter that is not related. Let's listen to the class. Yes, Steve.
Daniel, is this a sexual poem?
Daniel, do you want to answer?
Should I answer in general? Wait until if anyone has anything else to say.
My answer would have been, it is, Steve, if you want it to be.
Yeah, exactly. That is my answer.
Want it to be.
That's my answer, and my other answer is that I believe that everything that humans create has an aspect of sexuality to it, because it has to do with procreation. This is a fixation, proliferation, but not specifically. But if you want it to be, it can be.
Okay. Anyone else wants to go before we give Daniel a chance to tell us what his poem is actually about, and where he tells me that I'm right? Of course, by the way, Daniel, in case you're curious, someone did critique my critique of you, like of trying to tell you to write more like as I see poetry. That you should use more of yourself, and I also agree with Steve that I did see more of you, even though it's hidden. I do feel that you've actually put more of yourself into this poem. Okay, Daniel, it doesn't seem like we have anyone else speaking, so go ahead and reply.
First of all, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who have made comments, and I had a feeling this time that I haven't had before. It's like I almost don't want to say anything because I just just the critique was just perfect. Like I almost don't want to answer any of the questions because I don't want to change your perspective on it. Almost, it's like what you all were saying is perfect. Like I just, it's amazing to see. I'm trying to think what were the major questions if I could answer. I was unclear. I need to ask you, Guy, what you were trying to say your correction was on line 1. You said there needed to be you felt there needed to be a word added on 1 or 2 or something?
Stanza, the word 2. Like if you
where?
Look at, what do you mean where?
I don't know.
Okay, I'm going to read it. You wrote,
okay.
And when you read it out loud, you added it. Allow me stroll to the storeroom.
Oh, okay.
And that actually reminds me.
I'm disappointed.
That actually,
now I don't know if I can modify it.
You can't. And that actually reminds me of something else that I forgot because I had so much to say. I'm bothered in the first stanza. The sun's heat through clear panes. I think it should be either like comes through or like coming through. Like I think there's a word missing here.
Hey Guy, Kali Fondro just wrote a question in the chat. Can you speak to that?
By the way, I just figured out a glitch in Steemit. So if you want to edit something that is more than 7 days old, because I just made that change, all you need to do is keep the update post window open and never update the post. And then I think when it's passed, you can still click update because that's what I just did and it worked.
Okay, and Steve, I will answer Khalifandros after Daniel answers. Because it's
can you, since I was distracted, can you tell me the other change that you just saw again?
Yeah, like in the first line, the sun's heat through clear panes. I feel you're missing a word. The sun's heat shining, coming, something, you know?
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking you were saying at first, and if you were saying that at first, I was thinking I disagree because I actually want it to be kind of like stilted like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go on to see if I can see what people had asked. Okay, first of all,
mostly asked what the piece is about.
Yeah, what it's about. So this entire first part is not literal because I don't live on a farm. I don't have a cottage. I don't have a storeroom. Tiger was very close. This is an imagining. This is a fiction. This is a fantasy in my mind. If only I could live on a farm. If only I could be in this pristine sort of way of living. But Guy's input was very, very interesting as well, and he was correct that this is metaphorical. This isn't just about looking at vegetables. You know, it has to do with looking back onto the winter, and you know, this is one thing that I dislike. You know, I've come to where it's fine. I realize that everything can be read sexually, so that's, you know, I'm okay with this. It used to annoy me more, but that's fine, because like, for instance, the word fantasies has too much of a sexual connotation, which irritates me, because a fantasy is just like similar to a fancy or a hallucination or a whimsy. This is just a fiction. I don't know. It's just some sort of image in the mind or thought, you know. So I'm talking about like kind of when you're alone for so long, if you live alone and things, you're talking to yourself all the time. You know, I'm just repeating a bunch of things to myself under my breath. Actually, the second part is about a literal walk that I take from my apartment going upwards because I live on the mountain. This is just talking about metaphysically walking, you know, because you're seeing that you're completely becoming your walking. Thought becomes a pair of knees and the pressure of toes on pavement. And Guy was extremely spot on, actually, with everything he was saying about the mechanical crane. When it's overgrown by the vines, you become, actually your structure becomes weakened, so you become less rigid and you actually decay over time by the delicacy of life, meaning as you open yourself, you actually become destroyed by that as far as your separation.
But I don't think it's a decay, it's growth.
Yeah.
Like decay means,
right,
like the separation decays, which is how you grow. But I don't think you decay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to take too long. The middle part also, when that was interesting, guy said that the elements swirling and transmogrifying had some of this had to do with the clouds. Yeah, it kind of had to do with the idea that, you know, you can't see, like for instance, you can't see when a calcium exchanges itself with a different molecule and then turns into something else, because there's just a lot of things hidden from our perception that's invisible to us, but it's occurring, you know, like microbial life, bacterial life, because we couldn't handle it if we could see all this. That's why I say easily excitable. You know, we're sensitive creatures, but we only can see certain things. Otherwise, it's invisible to us. And this is continued on when you get to the night. Because this is sort of a morning, afternoon, night poem, kind of. And, you know, then you go back into dreams, which, as Guy stated, is also where you begin. Beneath the Grain is also a play on words because of the image of the basket of wheat, or the basket of, originally this was titled Basket of Wheat, but I didn't like it as much, so I called it, because people have too many connotations with wheat. But, you know, it talks about grains such as like wheat in a basket at the beginning, and then at the end it uses grain more as the idea of like wood grain, you know, what's beneath the pattern of things that you can see visibly. What is the divine foundation of things? What is the real truth beneath everything? So that's what I have to say. Thank you so much for all the comments. That was amazing.
Hey, Daniel, after hearing that, I want to say one more thing. What got me on the sexual thing was the behind closed doors. Because that can mean a lot of things, like, you know, you're beating your wife behind closed doors, but
What?
a lot of times that's a sexual thing. So, and then
In America?
Tiger, you're shouting a bit. But yeah, Steve, I think that's a clear case of you bring yourself a bit too much.
I'm not sure, though. I don't know. I might
Yeah.
question that guy. I'm not sure I'm the only one that would be reading it like that.
And by the way, I suddenly remembered, Tiger's poem was called Mother. And Tiger, I said it last time, but you really have to, like, when you record your poems, I really suggest you actually say the name of the poem first. So if people listen to them, aside from the post, they will actually catch the name, because we keep forgetting to actually say it, and a poem's name is actually important. Okay, so who wants to go next? Okay, Khalifrando, I think this discussion should actually wait either for another poetry class or for after this class, because it's actually, this class is not a general purpose poetry class. It's specifically about critique. So while I find different cultures' take on poetry fascinating, and I truly do, this discussion should be had later. Okay, Hazem linked his first, so we are going to go to Hazem's poem once. I am going to open it in on busy.org because it simply won't open right now on Steemit. The nodes seem to be down. In case anyone else can't open it, I'm also going to link it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to read it yourself, Hazem? You don't have to. Okay, your microphone, Hazem. Okay, your microphone is catching up a lot of noise, so I'm going to volunteer Daniel to read it.
Okay.
Okay, Daniel. Okay, we have an extra 15 minutes. Good to know. Daniel, please read Hazem's poem.
Okay, pulling it up now. Okay, so this is quite short, correct, Hazem? And then there's below, this is commentary.
Yes.
Is that correct? Below the line. If so, I would.
It's only.
Yes, it's only the part at the top.
Okay, yeah, I would recommend you to put some type of header in between them, perhaps, because it's not.
He used the HR break, which is.
Yeah, this is okay. Okay, that's fine. This is "Do We Really Want to Grow" by Hazem. Do we really want to grow? But first, do we really know what it means to grow old? Maybe charismatic, bold, or maybe enlightened and wise? Do we really realize that this ancient combination of age and rank and reputation should never be our goal? We shouldn't allow it to control our moves and words and attitude. In fact, what should be pursued is peace and love and delight. That's what matters. Am I not right?
And now we are going to take a minute to read it on our own. Okay, who wants to go first and not Daniel? Anyone?
I can.
Okay, go ahead, Katya.
Okay, so first of all, I think that the pictures he put here are very, very nice and cute here, because the main thing is like he's talking about, in general, stereotypes that when we grow up, we have this age, rank, and reputation. We are not supposed to do some things anymore. Like, we are supposed to be serious, to do certain things. What he's not doing, actually, he is behaving like a child. And that's nice, because in the end, he's saying that what we should do is what we should do: peace, love, and delight, to bring all these things to the world. And that's why I think that pictures really complement this poem. And also I find it really, really, I don't know what's happening to my English today. Not optimistic, cheerful, optimistic. Yeah, I'm sorry for my language.
Thank you, Katya. Who wants to go next? Nerdy Kim says, yeah, the poem makes us feel age is elusive, as in is an illusion. Anyone else wants to go?
I'll go right quick.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that in this poem, rhymes have progressed, because sometimes his rhymes are very limericky, and I think that this poem shows a really good progression. It's really the overall, I really like the essence of the poem. I'm struggling a bit with the last two lines, not on what they're saying. I think it's important that what they're saying, but for some reason the rhythm is sort of, it snags on the am I not right, but I haven't quite found a way to, like, you know, keep what he's trying to say, like arrange it yet that it sounds better. But for some reason, like it all read really smoothly, and then it and the last two lines it seemed to snag, and it's like I would maybe cut out the and with the love when it comes to that line. That might fix that. It's peace, comma, love, delight, or peace, love, and delight. But the peace and love and delight sort of like feels weird to me. But the last line, the am I not right? I know that we need the right, and that's what matters. But the am I not right? It needs some kind of reworking, in my opinion. But I can't really pinpoint what it is yet. That would be it.
Thank you, Tiger. Daniel, you're up.
Yes. The first thing I want to say, as far as an editing point of view, which I think we've never actually told Hazem, but it came to my attention now because I've been practicing writing more verse, and I kind of see Hazem as somewhat of a verse poetry writer, and I want to just say that in my opinion, the main reason why, and I also do want to say I've seen a lot of progression in your writing, and I really admire that, and it's great to see. I agree with Tiger. But I identified to me what the main thing that snags me, that makes these less smooth than they could be, is that if you're wanting to write a verse poem and there's a lot of rhyme and there's a lot of flow, then you're being extremely inconsistent with the number of syllables. Like if you just count the syllables for all the lines, they're all over the place. There's no sort of consistency or pattern to them at all. There's nothing telling the reader what's a stressed syllable, what's an unstressed syllable, unless they heard a recording of you reading it. I know people are free to disagree with me. I know Guy has some opinions that, you know, iambic pentameter, in his opinion, is not the most natural. But I would recommend to go with some sort of meter or some sort of rhythm if you're going to go for this style, because I just think it helps it. And I have some resources that I could link you later, but anyways, that was the first thing I identified, and I'm not going to go line by line and say the syllable count, but I did count it when I was just looking, and they're very inconsistent. But I also agree with Tiger that I think that it actually flowed very well. And of course, consider that that's an option. If you want to do the irregular counts, that's fine too. Just realize that it makes it harder for the reader to catch your flow, unless you're very cognizant of what you're doing. First of all, I can identify with the message of this piece a lot. You know, I'm 27. I know it's you go through this and you're like, there's a lot of struggles you go through seeing what people are considered that they have to do at certain ages, the roles and all of this. And I like the pictures too. I agree. That's, you know, so I see this as you kind of grappling with what your role is going to be within communities and for yourself, and how you're going to kind of grapple with the situation of growing older, but wanting to maintain youth and wanting to maintain pure things, not just your rank and reputation. To me, the ending part, along with agreeing with Tiger that it snags a bit, am I not right? Is it feels a little platitudinous, overly platitudinous and heavy-handed, like peace and love. Delight I actually like, because this is less overused. Peace and love and delight, I do actually like, kind of like that. That's what matters. Am I not right?
Here's an idea. I'm going to interject for a moment.
Go ahead.
We spoke in the past how breaking the rhyme or adding rhyme only at the end can be very impactful. I imagine if the last two lines read is peace and love and delight, that's what matters, and ending there, like the fact that you actually break the rhyme there would actually draw even more attention to it. So that's an interesting suggestion on what you could have done. Actually not have that last rhyme at all.
Okay.
I like that idea. Yeah.
I kind of want to talk to.
Wait, Steve. Daniel,
Okay.
are you done? Because...
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Steve.
For me, from the very start, the playfulness of it, you know, with the use of the word really, and it's used a couple times, it kind of justifies that last question, because it becomes less of a platitude. The whole poem becomes so playful that platitudes kind of go out the window, and it kind of almost becomes like a little thought provoker. That's what I think this poem is. It's just meant to get you to think a little bit, and to not be a whole lot more than that, just getting you to think. And I kind of enjoyed that, because I looked at it in different ways. There were some things that I might critique, but I'm actually going to hold back on, because I kind of understand what was the intent of the piece, or I think I do at least. You know, because with the reallys, that was going to be one of my suggestions, is to maybe think about taking the reallys out. I use words like that all the time, like really, and stuff like that, just generic words. And I'm not saying you're wrong for doing it, Hazim, but and if it's for the tone's sake, I can kind of understand. That's why I was kind of going to hold back on that critique, but at the same time, just maybe question that. And you know, as far as the meter and the rhyming throughout the poem, I kind of am a little bit freer with that. It didn't really snag me that much, just for another perspective on that. I kind of just enjoyed this piece as something that didn't really have to be a whole lot, but in not being a whole lot, the youthfulness of it and everything really came out, so I kind of enjoyed it that way. That's really all I have to say.
Okay, I will go now. Hazem, you tend to just copy a line from the text to the title, even if do we really want to grow in the piece is fine. I don't like the word really in the title. And the title needs a question mark because it is a question. I agree with Tiger that in the past, your past 2 poems that you shared always had something that felt rhyme-led. There was nothing here that felt rhyme-led to me, so that was a big improvement. Though in terms of the cadence, I feel like it's a bit worse if you have the rhyme continue past a question mark, because a question mark is an even bigger stop than a period. Should never be our goal. When we stop, we shouldn't allow it to control, and by the time we get there, the rhyme, if you actually read it out loud, has been lost. So it's like if you were like to break it to couplets, for instance, you would see what I mean. That I want each rhyme to actually be in the same couplet. Like Percy Shelley and Keats and some other poets don't always do that, but like that should be, I think, the default. If you want to go with the casual tone that Steve mentioned, then I would have changed "Am I not right?" into just have "That's what matters, comma, right?" Because that's casual, but I feel right here it's no, like because right here I feel like it's too slow, too much of too much. But here's my big criticism of the poem. But again, this is like something that it's take it or leave it, because I can see it in both ways. But you never answer the big questions. What it means to grow old. Like, what should be pursued is peace and love and delight. How does it answer whether we want to grow? How does it answer what it means to grow old? It doesn't. It says that these are the things that matter. But that answers a false answer that was given on what it means to grow old. It doesn't answer what it does mean to grow old. It doesn't answer whether we do want to grow, because we can actually have, like, your images sort of give one answer, but are you saying that people who grow old, not just older, but grow old, can't have peace and love and delight in the company of one another, or like in the joy of a stroll or going to a play or things such as that? So you don't actually answer either of the questions you ask in the beginning, and I feel that's something like, in general, I often tell you that your poems lack a stanza, basically, and I feel either you are lacking a stanza here, somehow, some way, or you might want to rework the first 3 lines to actually have it so they are answered by the end. So, like, why is it important? Like, why should we listen to those who have grown old? And then, but what does it mean to grow old? Should we listen just because blah blah blah? Like, I don't know, but I feel there is something definitely missing here in that sense, that you don't actually answer. But I do feel that this piece was an improvement in terms of the rhymes and the structure and the English used. Anyone else wants to say something? Anyone?
Wait, I had something.
Yes.
Okay, I feel, because I'm the lone voice in saying this, so I'll put it on the record. Seemed like it didn't really bother anyone, the whole syllable thing that I was mentioning, but I kind of feel like what we've talked about in this class before. It's fine to write this style of poetry without being consistent, but I think it's better if you know the rules and then break them. And for me, it comes off as not knowing that he's being inconsistent with syllables because he hasn't practiced writing poetry that is like that. Not that you have to, but I'm just saying that's kind of how it comes off for me. But I like the poem. It's really cool to see the progression.
By the way, I've received quite a few times in the past people told me that like my syllable count is inconsistent, or so yeah, it's not the reason I am not bothered is not necessarily because it's not an issue, but because my tendency, my writing like doesn't care. Like when I write, I don't care at all. It doesn't mean that it doesn't matter, but it's something that I in particular don't care about, and that is also one of the reasons I always recommend when you ask critique that you ask more than one person, because each person brings something different to the table, and yeah.
But Guy, you're the walking handbook. I mean, you're the live incarnation of the handbook. You know the rules, and Daniel's not wrong that people should know the rules before they break them.
Oh, definitely. I'm just saying that in particular, this is not something I consider to be a rule. like we have a philosophical disagreement on this question, but I value him giving this critique. I'm just explaining why it didn't bother me, because that's not a rule in my rule book. Hazem, do you want to write something or say something in response?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and I would really appreciate if you send me that link you talked about.
That's Daniel, yeah.
I don't, yeah. And about answering the questions I asked, I answered only one, which is, do we want to grow? Obviously. By saying no, by explaining what really matters, which is not.
I believe you. Yeah, but I believe you didn't answer it. You left it unanswered. You said what is important, but what is important is neutral. You can also have it while you grow old. So it's not something.
That's why I was calling this a thought provoker. For me, the piece wasn't about answering a question, it was about bringing a question to somebody else.
What should be pursued is it means the rank and reputation shouldn't be pursued, in my opinion.
Yeah, but that's not what growing old is. That's what I'm saying. You are
open.
Yeah, my critique was that that's not what growing old is. That's why people think what they get when they grow old. But
one more thing, I wasn't speaking about age here. It's like maybe old in that community, or who comes first, or I'm not talking about only age here. If you read the notes, you'll get it better. But I was talking about when you join a community, maybe a NGO or something, there are older people than you, and you are the new one, the new guy.
More
That's
senior
what
people.
I was.
Yeah. More senior people.
Also here in Steemit, maybe you have that age thing. It applies also on that.
Okay, Nerdikim, comments that we critique can be up to 250 words. Your poem is 100 words longer than that. Do you have a shorter poem to share? Because we don't go over such long poems. It would literally take an hour.
I have a really short one if
Yeah,
he
share
doesn't.
it. You also left comments. Yeah, that's actually written in the rules for this class. Do you want to read it, Katya?
Oh, well, maybe Nerdy Kim wants to post his. It's okay. I was critiqued before. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, anyone that we don't get to, I'm assuming it will roll over to next week.
Yeah, I mean, unless we want to
They'll
share
have
another piece. Yeah.
Like live rushing can begin at the beginning of next time if we don't. I mean, because we only have about 15 minutes, so.
Yeah, I'm totally okay.
Okay, I'll grab yours then. He said his internet's bad. Let me grab the link.
Yeah, and let's look at its length as well. Because if you have 15 minutes, Latent Siege, let's see.
It doesn't seem that long.
Yeah, it is short enough.
Okay.
Danny, are you going to read it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The climate was... Okay, this is Latent Siege by Nerdy Kim. The climate was pleasant. The chances were present. The barons and peasants were happy with 10 cents. The angel descended, inspired the pressed nerds, respected the best heads. The wrestlers were blessed. The harvests were abrupt. It was like a setup. Change clinging to eardrums, like sand to an earthworm. The vassals were mere cops who raced to the dear top. When lynched by the rear mob, refused to lose teardrops. The elders were riddled, the horses unsaddled. The land was a shithole, our fortunes were fiddled. They tried to erect us, the Homo erectus, but they faced immense wrath and stopped coming thenceforth. Our children were slaughtered, our women were butchered, the maidens were murdered, our gold coins surrendered. We leave on a clean slate, we hope with some thin faith, then die with a message that came on a red page.
And now we are going to take a minute to read it in quiet. Okay, before we go, I'll just let Nerdy Kim know something. In general, don't respond to anything anyone says until we are all done, and then you will be given a chance to reply. But in general, my recommendation is that people do not respond to the actual critique immediately, because it tends to lead to knee-jerk, and it's better to actually take time to let the critique sit until you can digest it fully. Okay, we don't have much time, so who wants to go first? Don't be shy, come on, people, someone speak up now.
I'll go quickly since we don't have much time.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, you need a space after the comma after eardrums on line 6. Same thing on the second line of the last stanza, always have a space after a comma. You have capitalization on every line except for the fourth line, where you have this sort of odd structure of a half ellipsis meaning 2 dots only, and then there's 2 on the beginning of the line. Which is an interesting idea, but it seems more contrived. I don't see that it actually adds to the piece, or I'm not sure what you were trying to do with that. That's the main things that pop out to me. Again, you have only 2 dots instead of the normal 3 dots on line 7. So just noting that. In general, I recommend people not to use ellipses, the 3 dots, in poetry. Just a personal taste thing. But Latent Siege, I wanted you to bring your piece forward because you have this interesting, like, very rhyme-heavy style, within the middles of lines and as well as at the end of lines. That being said, it is rather inconsistent. There are a lot of slant rhymes, which personally don't bother me as someone who's really into a lot of hip-hop and rap and spoken word. I don't mind slant rhymes, just pointing it out. Not all of them are actually proper rhymes. Let's see. Again, you need a space after change, clinging to eardrums, after this quotation marks. To start with the bad and move to the good, I would say that I like your style of writing like this, but a lot of the lines seem like they're just there for the sound, not the meaning. Because unless you're trying to express paradoxes, they actually seem like more like non sequiturs. In some cases, like the vassals were mere cops who raced to the deer top. It seems like that's there for a rhyme, and I don't actually know what that means. It doesn't really make sense because you said they're not at the top, they're at the bottom. The barons and peasants were happy with 10 cents. I also don't understand that because a baron and a peasant are very different positions. Maybe you're trying to equate them both together as if, well, they're both not the king. There's a very medieval sort of vibe here for me. Very brutal, especially towards the end. I do like the poem, and there's a sort of like a savagery to it that is normally I see when people try to write like this. There's a sort of a whimsicalness that diffuses it, but I think for the most part, it's pretty intense. I don't like the line depressed nerds. It just comes off as, for me, silly. I don't like, unless you're trying to be humorous there. For me, it comes off as humorous. Yeah, I don't want to take too much time. I want to let other people comment.
Okay, I will go now. First of all, there is no real reason for you to have those long lines when you cut them in the middle and you rhyme like this. The elders were riddled, the horses unsaddled, the land was a shithole, our fortunes were fiddled. And what rhymes here is the riddled and the fiddled. So what reason is there for this to be 2 lines rather than 4? It may as well have been it may as well have been 1 line. I feel that the only reason it's 2 lines is because you are trying to force each stanza to be 4 lines, and that's, even though that does not actually help your poem in any way, you really should not have an image in the middle of a poem because it breaks the flow of reading. I really like the sound of the piece, but as Daniel said, you know how I often speak against lines being rhyme-led? This is too sound-led. Like, the climate was pleasant, the chances were present, the barons and peasants, like, that sounds great, but it doesn't mean anything. And poems should mean something. And I have to ask, what is inspired depressed nerds? What does that even mean? That's like that's, I'm going to be blunt, that's nonsense. Respected the best heads, the wrestlers were blessed, that's also nonsense. Like, you just have nonsense here for the sound, and while it sounds good, it is like pleasant to listen to for a moment, but then you forget it because the words don't stick with you. You have inconsistent periods at the end. Like you have a period at the end of the fifth line, at the third line of the third stanza, at the second line of the final stanza, but many other places that should have periods don't have them. The second half, like from when you go to when lynched by the rear mobs, refuse to lose teardrops, it feels as if you're throwing platitudes. People don't realize, because sometimes it's not just platitudes, and not just like when we went over Daniel's poem the other day, or someone else's, when I say, his poem, where it was between X and Y, and he kept having too many such couplets. When you have our children were slaughtered, our women were butchered, the maidens were murdered, our gold coins surrendered, you are not actually saying anything, because you are just throwing these sentences out at us. You should have one of those and then explore it, and then if you still need to, then you go for the other. But if you just like give me, it's like a laundry list. What purpose does it serve? It doesn't actually stick. Like if you compare it to Tiger's poem from earlier today, then yours is on the other end of the spectrum, because she dwelt on each thing. She dwelt on it and explored it, and like I felt she explored it too much before she moved to the next thing. Here, like our children were slaughtered. That should be at least a couplet, if not a stanza, if not a poem. Our women were butchered, the same. Like you don't actually, like the final two lines sort of have a message, but that message has nothing to do with the first two stanzas. And in general, like the final two, I can't see the final two stanzas are speaking about a war, about an invasion. Dabo, you need to mute your microphone. About a war, about an invasion, about slavery. But how is that related to the first two stanzas? I think like if I try to make it work, I think that he's saying that before the invasion, like even the barons were happy with nothing. Like everything was nice, you know? The red stars were blessed, the herds were blessed, the harvests were abundant, not abrupt. And then things happened and everything went to ruin. But you throw words at the wall and hope them to stick, rather than actually doing work. Like people think that if you just use imagery, then you've done your work as a poet. You haven't. Your work is to make us care, to make us see, to make us feel that it's significant. You have to actually dwell on things. Okay.
Can I speak to this?
Yes. Yes, Steve, go ahead. Steve?
We can't hear you. We can't hear you,
Steve,
Steve.
yeah, you need to press the button.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to change it to voice activity real quick. Need to look at it while I talk to it. All right. Nerdy Kim, in what has been said about just the nonchalant use of imagery, the seemingly not caring if it makes sense or it doesn't, kind of the weird little quirkiness with the ellipses, things like this. For me, it doesn't bother me. But that's just for me. And I think it's because I can read into what you're saying. Like I'm that type of a reader that I read into things. So I find enjoyment in a lot of things that other people don't. But that being said, they do have a point here with some of it. I would say keep doing that and explore it. But at the end, after you're done, rein yourself in and read back through it and maybe take out some stuff. And keep what you're intent on, and even if you feel like it's needed and it's not coming across to other people, keep it anyways because you feel like it's needed, and it's just a poem. Maybe your next poem will be more clear. It's just a process. So I kind of like that you're writing like this with this high level of experimentation. I would say the biggest thing for me was the spaces that weren't in there. And I'm guilty of this. Last time I brought a piece in that had the word breath instead of breathe. So I would say, though, if you're going to bring it to the critique class, kind of clear that up as much as you can. Fixing that. Also, you need a period at the very end of the poem. But I got a little bit of what Guy was saying about the kind of understanding the message in the first part, but then you get to the last part and it's kind of like it's talking about something totally different. That I don't know if that's what's going on and you're doing that on purpose, but that kind of came across to me as well. It was kind of not the same thing that was being talked about, or I couldn't figure out how it worked together. As far as the nerds, I liked it because for me it kind of cleared up the tone, like towards the beginning of the poem, because you were talking about barons and peasants and all this, and once I got to nerds, I'm like, okay, those barons and peasants don't really have to be barons and peasants. They could be anything. And then after I read anything can be anything, because you use the word nerds all of a sudden, the whole poem kind of opened up for me in that way. So I kind of liked how you did that. And that's really all my critique on this.
Thank you, Steve. And we're actually out of time. So thank you to everyone who put forth a poem this week. Thank you to everyone who left a comment, which were Girl Before, Daniel, Hazem, Live Russian, who left 2, Tiger, and Nerdy Kim. Nerdy Kim, you will be given a chance to reply shortly. And thanks to everyone who gave critique in this class as well, because I know it's not easy putting yourself out there, so thank you for your time. Nerdy Kim, you can respond, but in case you didn't hear me before Daniel gave critique, I generally recommend not responding to the critique immediately, because people tend to be overly defensive immediately, and it's better to let it sink in. But if you want, go ahead. Nerdy Kim is writing. I will read his response for the sake of the recording, but while he's writing, I want to remind everyone that if you want to put forth a piece next week, you will have to you have to leave a comment between now and next Wednesday in the afternoon UTC. Okay? Not on Thursday. Definitely not on Thursday afternoon, because I actually do go over your comments to make sure they are fine before the class. Nerdy Kim wrote, I was actually describing colonialism, which, yes, I did talk about it, where I said that probably the first the first stanzas and the first line of the second stanza were the idyllic state before colonialism. But okay, he's saying, and the way the colonialists came and gave us stuff that seemed like magic. Okay, but I do see that, but I think the piece needs to be shored up. Things that made our harvest go fast, and we are so impressed. Yeah, Nerdy Kim, I do recommend you listen to some of the old recordings, because I speak at length actually about how an explanation is not an excuse, and how things need to actually come through in your piece. And if not, that's something that needs to be showed up in the piece. And with that, we are done recording. Thank you, everyone.